In today's video, we've got a big update on all things Borderlands. Borderlands Game of the Year Edition on PlayStation 4 is free to play this weekend, so if you want to jump into that, now would be a great time to do so, especially ahead of the release of Borderlands 3. Speaking of which, Borderlands 3's DLC will be more weird and more focused compared to that of the main game's content, so we'll take a look at what was said about that. Also on Borderlands 3, the install size for the game was revealed, and it will be a rather sizable install. However, comparatively speaking to recent big budget RPGs, it's actually a little bit on the smaller side, so that's pretty cool. THQ Nordic is prepping up a big Gamescom show, and with that, major news has come out that THQ Nordic has acquired a Darksiders 3 developers in Gunfire Games. That's pretty important because Gunfire Games has another game coming out very soon, so this is actually a pretty major acquisition. And lastly, Wargroove has made its way over to the PlayStation 4, but now it has been confirmed that a physical edition will be coming. We'll talk that at the end of this video. First up, I know you guys love your free stuff. Well, this weekend, Borderlands Game of the Year Edition on PlayStation 4 is free to play. Now, this is Borderlands 1 with all of the DLC, and you'll be able to play it from August 16th to the 18th, so you've got 3 days to check it out. Now, if you actually sit down and bum rush this game over the course of 3 days, you can definitely complete it. It's not like Borderlands 1 is this really lengthy game. However, if you do want to do all of the additional content, if you do want to do all of the DLC stuff, yes, that is a little bit of an undertaking. But if you do download the game, sit down and play it like 12 hours a day, yeah, you can do the majority of the content as well. I thought the game was really good. Obviously, I do believe that Borderlands 2 is the stronger game. I just thought that game made a lot of improvements, but Borderlands Game of the Year Edition actually brings over some of the mechanical improvements that Borderlands 2 made and the UI improvements, so that's pretty cool. It did have a rather lackluster ending, which was a little bit of a bummer, but at this point, you're playing it for free. You're not really going into Borderlands 1 to experience a compelling narrative. No, you're going in there to experience the great first-person shooting gameplay, and that is still absolutely intact. In addition to the game being free to play for the weekend, simply logging in to play Borderlands Game of the Year Edition will give you 1,000 Borderlands 3 VIP points, so there's even more incentive for fans to give it a crack, especially ahead of the release of Borderlands 3. Of course, all eyes at this point are on that game, and I feel like that's really the first major release of this fall gaming season. Yes, ahead of Borderlands 3, you've got games like Control, you've got games like Catherine Full Body that I'm personally really excited for, but I feel like Borderlands 3 is just on another level. Whatever the case may be, Borderlands Game of the Year Edition, whether you played it all the way back in 2009 when it initially released or you never played it, now's a great time to go back and give it a whirl. Alright, moving on from that, but still staying on the Borderlands topic, Borderlands 3 is gonna have some DLC. That is something that we've known about for quite a while, and it was noted that the DLC is gonna be more weird and more focused compared to that of the content in the main game. With the game only being about a month away from release, anticipation is already riding high for the upcoming Borderlands 3 as the next chapter of the fan-favorite looter-shooter series, and of course, the game is going to be significantly updated through its upcoming DLC campaigns. Speaking in an interview with DualShockers, Borderlands 3 lead writers Danny Hamann and Sam Winkler gave their insight on writing and expanding the series story with its third main installment, and specifically when they were asked a bit more about what to expect from the game's DLC content, which will include 4 campaign-based add-ons that will take players through new stories and areas similarly to what we saw in past Borderlands games. Winkler explained that the team is already working on the DLC for Borderlands 3 and simply said that they will be big and a lot of fun, while Hamann also added that the DLC campaigns are also different from one another. Winkler did say that the DLC campaigns for Borderlands 3 and the stories told through that will let the team to get a little more weird and a little more focused. Obviously, with the main game, they've got to do specific things so they satisfy all of the consumers. With the DLC, they can really let loose and do whatever the hell they want, because if you're picking up the Borderlands 3 DLC, chances are you're a big fan of this series and you're okay with more zany content and a content that's a little bit more out there. At least that's what I'm gathering from what's being said. Obviously, some of you guys are going to be against DLC from the get-go, but we saw with Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2, there was a sizable amount of DLC attached to both of those games, and those games did rather well. I imagine at some point Borderlands 3 will get some sort of Game of the Year Edition or Complete Edition release, and that'll have all of the content from the get-go. I do believe there's a Gold Edition that'll be out right away, and that will offer you the Season Pass or all the DLC or whatever the case may be on that. But nonetheless, it looks like the game is gonna offer some compelling DLC content. I imagine that there will be free updates rolled out to the game as well that's gonna add stuff, but just be mindful of the fact that the DLC does seem to be getting a little bit more weird and a little bit more focused compared to the main game. Alright, moving on from that, as as is the case with any open world RPG, you have to be a little bit skeptical on the file size and the requirement and what kind of hit it's going to take on your PlayStation 4 hard drive. Well, in the case of Borderlands 3, it's actually pretty tamed. It was noted that the game's approximate size will be 39.98 gigabytes. That's relatively small. I imagine that that will grow as the DLC is released and there are updates thrown out, but it's not going to increase by that much. If it hits only, say, 50 gigabytes, that's not a big install at all, considering we've seen games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Final Fantasy 15, Fallout 76, and I can go on and on. Those games are incredibly large in file size, so Borderlands 3 being only 39.98 gigabytes, that is incredibly tame. And I'm pretty excited to hear about that as well, whether you're buying the game digitally and the pre-download isn't going to be all too bad, or you're getting the game physically and the initial launch isn't going to be all too bad. It is good to hear that the game is just going to be 40 gigabytes. Alright, moving on from that, of course, we're heading into Gamescom, and one of the major publishers that's going to be there is THQ Nordic. Well, it has been recently announced that THQ Nordic has acquired Darksiders 3 development studio in Gunfire Games. Now, Gunfire Games, as I mentioned, did work on Darksiders 3, and I thought Darksiders 3 turned out pretty well. I know that critically, the reception wasn't incredibly strong. However, it was noted that they invested a certain amount of money to create Darksiders 3. The game sold enough copies to break even pretty quickly, and then it was making a profit pretty quickly on top of that. At the end of the day, gaming is a business, and that is the imperative notion when releasing a game. You have to hit financial goals, and in the case of Darksiders 3, Gunfire Games, with the work on that title, they did hit those financial goals. Now, I'm sure from a Gunfire Games standpoint, they want to create the best game possible, but they released a pretty decent game with Darksiders 3. It made a profit, and that's really the most you can ask for, and now THQ Nordic has acquired them, which is pretty exciting. However, Gunfire Games is releasing another game, a game that is actually garnering quite a bit of interest, and that is Remnant from the Ashes, a co-op action shooter with a pretty cool premise. Keep your eyes open on that game because it could turn out to be pretty good, and it is being released at a budget price point of $40, so that's pretty exciting. And outside of Gunfire Games, they've also acquired Milestone SRL and Goodbye Kansas Game Invest. THQ Nordic just continues to acquire studio after studio, and while they aren't these big name studios, these are studios that could facilitate the creation of more compelling games, even if all of these games aren't a home run, as long as they create new and unique games. And hey, they got that quantity side of things packed down, and even from a quality standpoint and variety standpoint, they really have that packed down as well. You look at it from a content standpoint and what they're putting out, you've got these long-running series like Darksiders, and then you've got these quirky remasters like a SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, and then you've got games like Biomutant that are a little bit more big budget. It looks like Saints Row is making a comeback with Saints Row 5. They've got a lot of unique IPs under their belt right now. Can we just get a Kingdoms of Amalur remastered? Every time I talk about THQ Nordic, I think I'm going to bring that up just so it happens sooner rather than later. But nonetheless, Gunfire Games is now a part of the THQ Nordic family. And lastly, I do want to note that Wargroove on the PlayStation 4 will be getting a physical release. Publisher Sold Out will release a physical deluxe edition of Chucklefish developed turn-based strategy game Wargroove for PlayStation 4, and the PlayStation 4 version will be going for $29.99. The deluxe edition will include a set of exclusive stickers, reversible box art, map posters, strategy manual, and downloadable digital soundtrack. They noted Wargroove is a fantastic, critically acclaimed game which up to now has only been available as a digital download. So we've put together a special physical version which fans have been asking for it to be available later in 2019. Wargroove was received rather well. It has a very in-depth customization component to the game as well, so it has this never-ending flow of content, and the game itself fundamentally is quite good. If you're into tactics-based games like an Advance War, you're gonna find something very similar with Wargroove, with a charming art style and a lot of content to boot. So if you're more so into getting physical games, Wargroove the Deluxe Edition is a pretty nice release. We don't have an official release date for this one, but it does look to be coming later in 2019, and this is another game that was received rather well. I believe it's sitting at an 82 on Metacritic, so definitely a respectable score there. And that's gonna conclude this video. Again, play Borderlands Game of the Year Edition for free this weekend. It is a fantastic game and definitely worth your time. Borderlands 3 DLC will be more weird and more focused compared to the main game. The install size is gonna be pretty tame at 40 gigabytes. THQ Nordic has acquired Darksiders developers in Gunfire Games, and Wargroove is coming to the PlayStation 4 in the form of a physical version that'll be out later in 2019. That's gonna conclude this video. Do sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.